Welcome back to KOAN Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM, The Joe Miller Show. We're honored to have with us General William Boykin, Jerry Boykin, former United States Deputy Undersecretary of Defense, three-star general, original member of Delta Force, went after Pablo Escobar, involved in Grenada, shot by a .50 cal, miraculously healed, Black Hawk down, goes on and on. He's seen lots of combat, been on the point of the spear, the tip of the spear, with respect to fighting America's enemies. General Boykin, thank you for staying with us.
I'm delighted to be with you, Joe.
So one of the enemies that some people don't think is much of an enemy, and I guess I'd categorize the Obama administration as an entity that has that perspective, is Iran. Iran has been after the United States, killed Americans for decades, and yet it looks like we're approaching that problem with kid gloves. Reports are out that the deal that's being negotiated would basically consent to Iran having a nuclear weapon within 10 years. What's going on with this proposal? Do you think the Obama administration is properly addressing the threat that Iran poses to the United States and Israel?
I do not. And what you saw last week was you saw the 21st century Churchill when Bibi Netanyahu came and spoke so boldly and so clearly about the threat that Iran presents. No, this administration is not actively trying to stop Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. And the 10-year reference, though, is that whatever deal they cut with Iran would have a sunset clause in it of at the end of 10 years, it's no longer valid anyhow. Well, that's unacceptable. And what Netanyahu did not talk about, Joe, was the theology of the leadership of Iran. Iran is not run by President Rouhani. The reality is it is run by a group of mullahs called the Supreme Council, the Grand Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as well as a group of Islamic clerics that are all Twelvers. That means they believe, as Twelvers, they believe that the Messiah will only return when the world is in bloodshed and chaos. There is no better way for them to create the bloodshed and chaos that would bring the reign of their Messiah than to use a nuclear weapon. So don't think like a Westerner. Don't make the mistake of thinking that they would not use a nuclear weapon. They will, particularly against Israel.
Well, not even think like the old Soviet Union. I mean, at least the Soviet Union was partially a rational actor. In this case, when you've got somebody that's motivated by an apocalyptic view like that, self-harm really doesn't play into the picture, does it?
No, it doesn't. And people say, well, if they fired on Israel, Israel would use a nuclear weapon against them. Yeah, okay. Thanks. That doesn't matter to them because in reality, if they lose 5 million people in the city of Tehran, those people are all martyrs for Allah, but every Jew that they kill is going straight to hell, and they bring the reign of their Messiah. That's the point of all of this. So as a Westerner, that's hard to understand, but it's the reality of how they think.
Now, some would argue that the leadership of Iran is separate and distinct from the people, that they, the leadership, the religious leadership, they're a bunch of zealots, but the people are Western-leaning. Something that concerns me is 2 weeks ago, we put up a story that had pictures of protest in Tehran, and this is just very recently, within the last month, virulently anti-American in their perspective. You mix with that, there's been some recent polling data that suggests that the people of Iran are largely in alignment with their religious leadership. In other words, it appears that it ain't just the leadership, but the country as a whole has this perspective. Do you agree?
Yeah. I think that there is one group that is absolutely pro-West, and that is the underground church in Iran. And this will surprise a lot of people, but the underground church is probably at least 1.5 million people and growing rapidly.
Wow.
They are pro-Western because they have a biblical worldview now, and they see the evil of their own government. But it's a mistake to say that the people of Iran don't support their government. Of course, many of them are nationalists. Now, there is an ethnic divide there. There are a lot of people in Iran that are not Persians. In fact, there are a lot of Arabs, there are a lot of Tajiks and Uzbeks and Turks, and so they're not as supportive of the government of Iran, but they also want to survive, and they don't want to see a situation in which Israel or America or anybody else does a preemptive strike. So for that reason, they would stand in opposition to what their government is doing right now.
One of the things that I find frightening is not just, of course, the saber rattling, the comments from the theocracy leading that country, but looking at what they're doing on the ground. I mean, they've got their fingers all across the Middle East now. I mean, there's been a massive expansion of Iranian influence over the last 5 or 6 years, hasn't there?
It is huge. I mean, look at Bibi Netanyahu said it the other day in his talk. They have 4 capitals right now. You know, the capitals of 4 nations right now are under the control. They're dominated by Iran. You know, you've got Yemen, you've got Iraq, you've got Syria, and essentially you have Libya too. So they are dominating 4 capitals there. That should be an indication that they're building their caliphate or their super state.
Now, is it your perspective that Iran, the leadership of Iran, the theocracy, wants World War III?
Yes, it is. That's a good way to put it. Yes, they do, because, again, that brings the chaos that ultimately ushers in the reign of their Messiah. I know it sounds ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous to a Westerner, but these people are committed to this theology. It is demonic, it is demented, but it is a reality too.
Now, they believe that this 12th Imam is actually living today, right?
They believe the 12th Imam has been hidden, probably being protected and cared for by the angels, but they believe that when he disappeared, he was taken and hidden to be returned on the Judgment Day, which is, you know, when the world is in this chaos.
Well, it's a crazy scenario, one that we've got to pay very close attention to. General Boykin, do you have time for a call?
I do.
Carol, welcome to the Joe Miller Show.
Hi, Joe. Full disclosure here, I am a personal friend with Jerry and his family, love him to death. I just wanted everybody to know and to publicly thank Jerry for all the work that he does. Nobody realizes how much danger he is in just by speaking the truth. And I just wanted to publicly thank him for everything he does, because I know that he has done a lot that people don't even know about. So thank you, Jerry. God bless you.
Thanks, Carol. I appreciate those words, Jerry.
Yeah, God bless you, Carol, and Bill as well. And just for the record, she probably makes the best apple pie that I have ever eaten. I just want to go on record as saying that.
So I know what, next time I'm down on the Kenai, Carol, I guess I know what I'm going to ask for. We lost her. But anyway, yeah, Carol, great people down there. General, that is something that people don't really realize, is that when you take a stand on these issues, you know, whether it's, the radical left that ends up crashing your building in Washington, D.C., with murder on the mind, or it's the Islamic fanatics that try to track you down, there are real risks today in speaking the truth. And, of course, there's a lot of animosity societally, too, to standing up and saying the truth. But I think that there are a lot more people out there than what people really recognize that support the truth. People are really, I think, in starvation mode for people that are willing to take a stand and sound the alarm and speak out truth on these important issues.
I couldn't agree with you more. There are a lot of people that are starting to find their legs and show some courage now, and they just need to stop worrying about what somebody's going to say or what somebody's going to think. You've got to stand for what you believe in.
Well, General Boykin, I appreciate the stand that you're taking. I'd like to keep you over to the next segment, talk a little bit about what's going on in the United States military, specifically Chaplain Lieutenant Commander Wes Modder, who is under threat of losing his job because of his beliefs, maybe some other issues. Stay with us. The Joe Miller Show. We'll be back with you in a few. Welcome back to KON Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM, The Joe Miller Show. Again, we're honored to have with us General Jerry Boykin, 3-star general, Delta Force member, been involved in I don't know how many combat missions. Absolutely an American hero, somebody standing up for truth, what's right, international issues, making a stand, domestic issues, making a stand. General Boykin, thank you for staying with us.
I'm glad to be with you, Joe.
So, General, one of the things I promised our audience earlier was that we'd talk a little bit about what's going on in the military today. A story came out through Fox News. Todd Starnes broke it about military chaplain, apparently Navy guy, served the SEALs, may get kicked out of the Navy for his views, apparently Christian views. Do you know anything about that case?
I know a lot about it. In fact, I've talked to him today. Chaplain Wes Modder, former Marine, now a Navy chaplain. He's been a Navy chaplain, I think, about 14 or 15 years. Served with SEAL Team 6. And he's stationed at the submarine base in Charleston, South Carolina right now. And, you know, the Navy has a program where if an officer finishes his training, then he just kind of goes into a holding pattern. So they took a young Lieutenant JG and they put him in the chaplain's office just to help out here until we get you to your next assignment. Well, the guy came in and sat down privately with Chaplain Mader numerous times and asked him questions about sexuality, particularly about homosexuality. Chaplain Mader, in the privacy of a one-on-one, gave him his biblical view on sexuality, not just homosexuality, but infidelity and other sexual sins. And finally, one day, this Lieutenant JG walks in with two equal opportunity officers and informed him that he had filed a formal complaint against the chaplain for intolerance and bigotry and all of that, and the Navy relieved him immediately and is now going through the process of determining whether he can be retained until retirement. And I want to tell your audience that this chaplain is a guy with an incredible record, and it would be different if the guy had a bad record, but the guy's got a really good record. So what we have is we have a guy that was deliberately set up, and the Navy reacted to this in what I consider to be an unacceptable way.
Well, I got out active duty 92, was still in the reserves up until 97, but never, I don't think we had equal opportunity officers. What is that all about?
Well, that's a feel-good thing where, you know, you've got these people that are supposed to be making sure that the services are implementing the equal opportunity programs that have been established by the administration. And in this case, it's the equal opportunity programs associated with same-sex marriage. And by the way, this Lieutenant JG that set him up was married to another man. So, and you know, Joe, this is not about how people have sex. This is about freedom of religion. This is about the First Amendment. This is about that chaplain's rights and expectations. His denomination put him there after having trained him. They then gave him the opportunity to serve this country, but their expectation was he would stand on the tenets of the faith of that denomination. And now the Navy has said to him, your faith doesn't matter. We don't want your faith or your values if it contradicts the agenda of this president. That's plain and simple.
And his credentialed denomination, or he was credentialed by the Assemblies of God, right?
That's right, Assemblies of God. And they are they've never wavered in terms of Romans 1, sexual sin. And you know, you and I are heterosexuals. It would be just as much of a sin for us to be cheating on our wives or doing, you know, other things that fall into the category of sexual sin. So the chaplain, he didn't single out a homosexual. The guy came repeatedly and asked him for his thoughts on this particular issue of homosexuality, and the chaplain gave him an honest or response to his questions.
Well, and it's a free speech issue, too. I mean, I know that you don't have unabridged free speech in the military, but my word, a private counseling scenario where the individual comes to him and inquires about matters of faith, and the guy answers honestly, and he's now penalized, and he's 1 year from the 20-year mark, right?
No, he's 6 months. Well, September will be his 20-year mark. So Listen, Joe, I want to ask you and your listeners too to help us with this, because at the Family Research Council, we are simply not going to let this go unchallenged. We are, and along with a lot of other organizations and people, to include the Liberty Institute, which is defending him pro bono. And they've got a great lawyer named Mike Berry that's defending him. But we've got to get a petition up, and I want tens of thousands of signatures on this petition. We will deliver it to the Secretary of Defense's office and to the Secretary of the Navy's office, telling them that this is outrageous and that we demand that they stop this persecution of not only Chaplain Wes Modder, but chaplains all over the military that are going through exactly the same thing. It just hasn't reached this point with most of them.
Well, General, send us the link to that. We'll put that up with your podcast as soon as we can. We have something like 100,000 unique visitors to Restoring Liberty a month, so we should be able to do our part to help those numbers. But, the deal with Chaplain Mader is not the only danger sign as far as trying to change the ideological direction of the military. I just recently read that the Secretary of the Air Force has said that in a very short period of time, the U.S. military will begin integrating transgendered troops. What do you know about that?
That's absolutely correct. And I want you to think about this. We have right now a situation in which we know that veterans have been denied colonoscopies that might have saved their lives. At the same time, we have a transgender traitor. His name is Bradley Manning. He's in prison for betraying his country, but the U.S. taxpayers are going to fund his sex change hormone therapy. Does that seem right to you? Does that seem right to anybody? That the transgender would receive better care than a veteran that has served the country? That a transgender agenda would be more important than taking care of the people that have served this nation honorably? It doesn't seem like it should be that way to me.
I've heard a scripture that talks about evil being characterized as good and good being characterized as evil. I don't think I see a better example than what you just described. People that have served their country honorably don't get their basic care, but then the federal government believes that we ought to be providing significant funding for sex change operations. What other outrages do you see going on, General Boykin, with respect to Obama's effort to transform the military?
Well, another one of his social experimentations is putting women in infantry units and special operations units, and I believe that is just the most insane thing. And what's really interesting about this, Joe, is when they made the decision to do that and they announced it, it was the same week that they passed this thing called Violence Against Women Act. So on the one hand, the Congress said we have to protect women. And I believe that. I absolutely agree. We should protect women. Should protect them from harm and from evil. But then we turn around and say, oh, by the way, we're going to put you in the front line, in the infantry, and we're going to tell you to charge into that enemy position there with men who want to kill you. It just does not compute. Everybody knows that it is a mistake to mix the sexes, to mix the genders in that kind of unit when you're living out of a rucksack, when you don't do anything that goes unobserved by your buddies, and to put one or two women in an infantry platoon is insanity. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, and the Israelis discovered that in their operations too, not to mention the physiological harm to women, forcing them to compete on a level that they weren't designed for. General Boykin, we only have about 45 seconds left, but I want to thank you for the stand that you're taking. Thank you for the hard work that you're doing. Again, let us know how we can help. We'll certainly direct traffic over to the Family Research Council's petition for Lieutenant Commander Wes Modder to make a stand on that issue. Give us the information. We'll get it out. Again, thank you for your service. Thank you for your stand.
Well, thank you, Joe, and God bless you for what you're doing.
All right. Thank you, General Boykin. The Joe Miller Show, back with you in a few minutes.